Death Stranding is a game that came out all the way back in 2019. And it's a game that for the most part, I feel like gets a lot of flack. I know there's a community for it. There's people that love this game with all their heart. But I heard a lot of things about it, like it's an Amazon package simulator, like the gameplay is very, very boring, the story is confusing, yada yada yada, so on and so forth. And to me, that put me off. I was content for a long time with never touching this game and just putting it to the side, saying like Kojima's work isn't for me. I've never played Metal Gear Solid because I remember seeing a clip of the early Metal Gear Solid game. I think it was Metal Gear Solid 3, the one that they're actually remastering this year. And early on, I remember a clip of it where you pretty much start the game off and every 5 seconds the game is stopping to give you pretty much like a radio call with someone, and it's like happening consistently. And I just thought, you know what, Kojima's games aren't for me. But then I saw the trailer for Death Stranding 2 at the Game Awards. I think it was the Game Awards of 2023 or 4. I don't remember. But all I know is that I saw this dude with a guitar for a weapon fighting samurai. And there was this big trailer with a bunch of gigantic monsters and weird things. And I just thought to myself, it looks cool. It looks cool. Maybe I should check this game out. So, fast forward to now, to present day, and I finally had, not much that I was playing, so I decided Death Stranding 2 comes out in June, which is literally next month, and I wanted to just try out Death Stranding, see if I would like it. As of now, finished the game. I didn't 100% it, but I finished the main story, and my thoughts on it are a little confusing, or not confusing, that's the wrong word, but my thoughts on the game are a little conflicted, to say the least, because I didn't hate it as much as I thought I would. I honestly kind of liked it, even the gameplay loop, but it still wasn't like, I wouldn't say it's in my top 10 video games of all time, I'll put it that way, okay? So I just wanted to kind of come on here and speak my thoughts on the game. I guess it's kind of like a review, but honestly, it's just my honest thoughts on the game. So first things first, what I want to say about Death Stranding is I love the ideas this game has. Like, I've always heard that Kojima is a mad scientist when it comes to this kind of stuff, and you guys who say that are not kidding. Like, some of the monster designs in this game, the ideas of a bridge baby, time fall that pretty much is rain that just ages your skin as you touch it, or pretty much ages anything as it touches it. It's just insane. There's so many ideas in this game that I don't feel like any other game developer or, game director would ever think of. And I just have to applaud Kojima for that. But the main thing I want to talk about first is gameplay, because that's the number one complaint I hear everyone say when it comes to this game is the gameplay is just boring and it's just Amazon package delivery express simulator. And to some degree, they're not wrong when they're saying that. So the early parts of this game, especially the early parts of this game, it's very, very off-putting. It's hard to get into it, and it's the reason why a lot of people drop it. The story is interesting, but the gameplay loop is so tedious and boring at the start because you don't have a lot of the tools that you get later on that make the game better. Like for me, for example, the gameplay loop of just taking cargo from one area to another wasn't very fun because, you're pretty much in the early stages, you're just pretty much walking in a semi-straight line and there's nothing much else to it. You have a ladder, you have a climbing anchor, and you maybe have a motorcycle, but for the most part, that's about it, man. Like that's really all it takes. And it does not help that chapters 1 to 3 are so long and so mind-numbingly boring. But the thing is, once you finish chapter 3, especially chapter 4, which, I love chapter 4. It was a very, very short chapter, but it was so cool. I loved it. But from that point on, the game starts to get better. You gotta start taking into account the path you're taking, such as, is the path I'm taking very snowy? Is it uphill? Is there a cliff that's kind of blocking off sections where I'd have to fall down? Is there a stream in the way? You know, what tools do I need to bring? Do I need to bring the PCC so I can build a bridge over this area? Yada, yada, yada. It becomes very, very strategic, and it makes it a lot more engaging to me. Especially one of the tools that the game gives you that I very much enjoy using was the zip line. The zip line for me was very useful in the part of the game where you have to traverse the snowy mountains, because the snowy mountains pretty much are, like, for me at least, were the hardest part of the game if you don't have zip lines, because you move so slowly. There's so many uphill areas, and it's very easy to fall over, and zip lines can cut off so many minutes of just wasted time when it comes to traveling, and I love that. And it kind of brings me into my favorite part about the gameplay, which is the fact that the online asynchronous features was amazing. The fact that you could see other people's tools as you were playing and use them yourself, it felt so fun. Like, for me personally, 90% of the things I use in this game weren't even made by me. They were made by other players, whether it be timefall shelters or bridges or zip lines. It was all made by other players, and I just love that. It kind of just takes the idea of the game, which I'll get into later, not like in depth, but later. The game is mainly about, you know, the rope and the stick. Rope being something that you use to bring people together, and the stick being used to keep people away. And this game is mainly focused on the rope and helping people, bring them together. And I feel like just the fact that you're able to build something not only for your own use but for other people, to help other people as well, is just hammering home that idea, you know? If there was one thing I could say about the gameplay as well, I would definitely mention that I wish you could play the music that the game plays more often, like the licensed music, because it only, as far as I can tell, it only triggers very randomly. It's not something that you can play on your own, which I don't know. I feel like there was a lot of times in this game where I would have absolutely loved to just have a listen to like one of the licensed songs, because it would just make the traversal a lot more calming and relaxing, if that makes sense. When it comes to the boss fights, they felt very 50-50. There was one kind of boss, there were two kinds of boss fights in this game. The first kind of boss fight is where you're basically fighting the monsters, the BTs in this game. Like, you're fighting the shark, you're fighting the whale, you're fighting a gigantic, I don't even know what this thing is called, to be honest. I don't even know if I have footage of it. I'll have to look through, but those boss fights are very much, like, not the greatest, because all you're really doing is just grabbing a bunch of weapons that are pretty much handed to you liberally. Like, you will never be in shortage of ammo or anything, because the game doesn't want you to struggle here. Clearly the game doesn't want you to struggle here, and you will pretty much watch these bosses no problem. I think I've only died once on a boss, and it was because I didn't realize I was being pulled under by a bunch of BTs, which caught me off guard completely, but that was like the one time it happened. The other kind of boss fight in this game is when you're fighting one of the characters, Cliff, and pretty much what is, I consider, like, very cool. It's pretty much like I guess it would be a Metal Gear Solid inspired boss fight, where you're kind of just using stealth to your advantage and looking for this guy. You're pretty much tracking his footprints, and you're pretty much like shooting him, which I know doesn't sound the most appealing, but when you're actually playing it, the setting you're in when you're fighting him, and the tensity that you feel. I feel more tense when I'm in those missions than when I'm fighting the BT. The last one especially pretty much made it so that you kind of, if you played well and you stealth to your advantage, you could pretty much wipe the floor with the dude. When it comes to story, I'm not gonna really dive into story like an insane amount, because there are videos for that, and if I'm being honest, the story definitely had me confused at some points. As much as I hate to admit it, I really had a hard time keeping up sometimes, because, oh man, there was a lot of times where the game just wanted to dump a bunch of info on you, and you kind of just had to process all of it, and you were just like, what? But yeah, I think the early parts of this game are what kept me playing. Like, I'm talking like chapters 1 to 3, because if it wasn't for the story giving me so many questions that I wanted answers to, I probably would have dropped it then and there. But yeah, like I said earlier, I think the game does a good job at giving you questions. The voice acting in this game was absolutely phenomenal, especially like Higgs. Every time Higgs showed up on screen, I literally felt like he stole the scene every single time. It was incredible. I love that character, except when he was like licking characters' faces. That was weird. I always felt unsettled by that, but yeah, I mean, what can you do? It's Kojima's ideas, I guess. But I think my number one complaint when it came to the story is like I said earlier, there were plenty of times where the game would just kind of just dump a bunch of lore on you, and it was just like go on and on and on. And it got to a point where you were putting your controller down just to listen. And that's okay once in a while, you know. Sometimes, like, every game does it here and there. God of War, I remember Ironwood was so boring and like that too. But with Death Stranding, it feels like that happens almost every other cutscene, man. Like, it was bad, especially towards the end. Oh my god, there was this one section, you'll know it. It's pretty much at the very end after you make a decision. You're kind of just stuck wandering, and like you're just hit with a bunch of cutscenes, and you're just like, okay, am I actually playing a game now, or am I watching a movie? I don't know. Granted, the cutscenes, at least later on, towards the end of that long section of cutscenes, are actually kind of interesting, but in the early parts, you're literally just, ugh, it was such a bad design choice in my opinion. It felt so boring. I guess what I will say is that like the twists and turns were fun. I kind of had a feeling that Cliff or Sam was the bridge baby that Cliff was talking to in all those cutscenes. But when it was actually confirmed and the way they showed it, I absolutely loved that scene. That scene was so good. The music and the voice acting and everything about that scene was just great. I absolutely loved that so much. But yeah, I can officially say after playing it and finishing it that Death Stranding isn't an amazing game. I would definitely not say it's a masterpiece or anything like that, but it's got potential, you know. And I went back and I watched the trailer for the second game, and I will say that after playing through the first game, seeing stuff in the second trailer or the trailer for the second game makes me a little bit more excited to play it. Granted, I don't want to get my hopes up because I doubt they're not going to be changing much in terms of the gameplay to make it more engaging. But, you know, hey, I'm glad to be on the hype train with everyone else a little bit. I will say that, you know, and I really do hope that Death Stranding 2 improves. At least for me, the gameplay won't change. I expect that, but I hope that the story doesn't have those long exposition scenes that just drag on. And I hope Kojima doesn't do that same thing he did at the end of Death Stranding 1, where there's just a bunch of cutscenes that just don't end, you know. It's a game. You got to remember it's a game, and you have your own ideas and vision. I get that, but remember it's a game, and we want to interact here and there, you know. But yeah, anyway, I hope you guys enjoyed the video. I enjoyed Death Stranding. If I were to give it a score, I would give it like, I don't know, if it was a score out of 10, I would say it's a 7 out of 10 for me, you know. I wouldn't replay it, and it'd definitely be hard to recommend to someone else, but I'm glad I gave it a chance because I really did enjoy it, you know, and I am excited for Death Stranding 2. Anyway, thanks for watching.